Good morning, everyone. Yes, normally there's a really nice intro that pops up here. Sorry, it wouldn't load for some reason. I was a little bummed out about that. I've been trying since yesterday to get it load, but for some reason, this program that I'm using just wouldn't accept any of my intros, so I don't know. I have to figure that out. So here's your wonderful intro, all that fun music. Today, we are going to be talking about the grip with Dax Mana. Unfortunately, Jen Mounts, who was supposed to be with us, isn't feeling up to par and has decided to just sleep in and feel better, which is really recommended. So it's just going to be Dax and myself. We're going to be talking about the grip and, of course, anything else that you guys want to bring up. And we're going to have some fun with that. And don't forget to check out Shot Darts, who is a great sponsor of the channel. And, of course, you'll see Dax's jersey and my jersey. These do come from Magicwear, just super comfortable jerseys. And as always, and you can ask, there are some folks here that you can certainly reach out to that are now using the Condor Flight and Shaft combination, and they are in love, and I mean ultimately, truly in love with that product. So check that out as well. So with no further ado, let's get Dax on the show and start talking about the grip and other fun darts things. And I do have a question for him as I bring you on, Dax, and we're going to get into your article that you had posted recently.
Sure.
So welcome to the show again.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. Today's show is going to be a little bit shorter than the normal hour. We're going to go like 45 minutes. We both have a couple things to do because in 1 hour and 41 minutes and 38, 37, 36 seconds, the World Championships start, and we both are going to be watching that, I'm sure. So
most certainly.
So how are you going to be watching? I know I do it through the PDC. I think there's a couple other options out there, but how do you watch?
I definitely watch through the PDC stream. And, you know, so many years ago, you'd have friends who had some kind of pirated connection and you'd get a link and and it would sometimes be good and sometimes be not. And a couple of years back, I decided, you know what, support the darts, support the PDC, get a stream that you know is going to work. And, you know, I even liked what they did with, you know, at the beginning of COVID with their subscription, how they pushed your membership and months. They kind of basically just froze it and say, you know, we're pushing it and putting it on the back end because there was nothing to watch in the beginning. So they did the right thing by the fans, and it's important we do the right thing by them.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. I've been a member for a number of years now. I think it's the best way to watch here in America. I mean, if you're over there and you can get to a tournament, I mean, there's nothing better than that. These days it's a little often. Just you and I were talking. I know we're going to get into the grip, and I got to ping you on some shoe fetish issues. But we were talking briefly about the fans. And if anybody doesn't know, today, which is day one, it's a shorter day. We are going to see Peter Wright, which will be awesome. But basically, they're going to be fans, about 1,000 fans let in for today, and then no fans for the rest of the tournament until possibly the final, where they're, again, I think going to have 1,000 fans, but that's still undetermined. So unfortunately, we're not going to have that fan base like we've seen, which I think plays into certain players' hands more so than it does others, and we'll just have to see how that unfolds. What are your thoughts and takes on that?
You know, I think it's going to open the door for a couple of players. Really, and it ends up being kind of a mental and psyche issue, how certain players deal with the jeering and the cheering and all the singing and the hooting and hollering. And certain players certainly get energized by it, and certain players, it gets the best of them. I think it's going to open the door for a few more of the thoughtful, kind of mindful, quiet players who it may distract. So it's going to be interesting to see, because I think that has certainly played its part over the past few tournaments in kind of opening the door for the technically savvy, but maybe mentally not as strong player. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm curious to see how it affects the tournament.
I am too. And just to bring up one match that I think this really plays into, which we're going to see in the next day or so, is Danny Baggish, who's an American player who will be going up against Hedda, who has thrived this year without the crowd being there. And I expected Baggish to be able to use the crowd a little bit, or at least headed, be a little more off. I think this plays into his game a little bit more. How do you think? I'm not going to ask you about all four of them unless you want to get into that, but I'm curious about that one because I think Baggish, from an American standpoint, nothing against Danny in any way, shape, or form. I think just Baggish is on his game right now. He's hot. He's playing well. I think he has the ability to go the deepest for an American, but I think that could be an upset. Where's your
overall, I think the lack of the crowds and the lack of the environment will only benefit both Americans and the Canadians, for that matter, just for the sake of them not being as used to being on the biggest stage with the most raucous crowd. It's while everyone's getting more experience with that now, and Danny's been on stage, and Jeff and Matt are really looked good a month or so back together. They both looked like they had the eye of the tiger in them, that they were really ready to go. And I think, like I said, I think this plays well to the Americans to give them an extra shot without the crowds being the way they were.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see, and of course, we see Jeff Smith from a North Cadian. I just created a whole new thing. North American standpoint, we see Jeff Smith go off today, so that's going to be exciting. But I do want to just bring up this article that you wrote, which is a fabulous article for the most part. So I'm just going to share this here real quick. Bring this in. Where is it? Let's move it over here. Computer's not playing properly. There we go. We'll share this. All right. So here we go. This is an article, and of course, Dax writes an incredible article for A to Z Darts. It's on their blog post. So he's doing a blog for them, and this really, everybody needs to stop. You've got an hour and something ahead of time after this show. Okay, after the show, read this, especially if you're trying to get better at darts. But one of the things he brought up, which I was super excited about, is this right here. This, which being footwear, because as you guys all know, I have this foot fetish thing. The footwear, because it's the base, it's the starting point of the stance, and for me, it's a big deal. And I just can't imagine that no smart footwear company has come along and said, PDC, we're going to throw bank at you because shoes are seen. If you guys didn't know anything about footwear and marketing with that, Adidas, their claim to fame, Puma. Got to get the best, which are their brothers, and that's a whole other story. I can get into that. But Puma's claim to fame was a particular soccer player that they got their shoe on, and he took almost 3 minutes to tie his shoe on the field, and the whole time the camera was on his shoe, which is what blew Puma up. And I am referring to the greatest soccer player ever to play, Pele. So go back and watch the Olympics with that. That was where it happened. And he literally 3 minutes tied his shoe, and the camera the whole time was on it, and it blew him up. So I think a shoe manufacturer needs to understand that and come out and support darts. That's where I'm getting at. But you talk about here in regards to shoes, and again, it being the base. Can you elaborate a little bit more on there? And then I want to pick on you a little bit for the shoe you picked, because it's ugly.
So as I hinted the last time I was on, when you were trying to get the teaser of what the shoe was, when I was in LA, I was in Manhattan Beach, and the clue that I gave was Manhattan Beach. Manhattan Beach is the world headquarters for Skechers, which is what this shoe is. And again, I wrote about the shoe. I'm not endorsed by Skechers. This is not something I have a connection to. I wrote about the shoe as a dart maven, as someone who wants to create my own edges, and I want to be able to provide those edges to everyone else. I truly enjoy giving the knowledge to people who are ready to accept it. Anyhow, it was, I had been experimenting with shoes going all the way back. And when I was in LA and I was getting ready for the final of the inaugural DPLA, I knew I wanted something different. The shoes I had at the time were all beat up. And I just went into the local Skechers store there in Manhattan Beach and said, this is basically what I'm looking for, a black shoe that's sturdy on the bottom, soft on the inside, that when I kind of lean in that unbalanced posture, that I can find more balance. And I said, if I win, I'm coming back and I'm buying more of them. And whoever needs to get the commission, I'll make sure they get the commission. So, and that's what happened. So I bought this shoe after trying on probably half a dozen pair, and this is what I've been wearing ever since. Make and model kind of as they update stuff and make them more fashionable and tweak. It's roughly the same model shoe that I've been buying since then.
Okay, nice. And just to show this again, this is the shoe, which I'm sorry, in my opinion, I wanted something prettier, more fancy, more fun, like maybe a wingtip or something. But if it works, it works. And I think the point that you were trying to get through with this article, more importantly, was find a shoe that you really like and buy a bunch of them and use that shoe consistently, because there is a different feel depending on the shoe. Your arch is going to change. How soft is the sole? It's really a matter of finding a good shoe. And honestly, I found a great shoe at Costco here back at the beginning of summer COVID type situation. And they were like $20, but it was a really nice Adidas, we'll say that properly, shoe that I really felt really comfortable. So I bought like 8 pairs of them. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm going to buy these. These are great. They were like $20. I'm like, I'm buying them. So, and I had the same mindset. It was like, okay, this is a shoe that I could use consistently for this. And I totally agree with you. It's finding the right footwear. As much as I will play barefoot with my son and I love flip-flops, I'm a huge flip-flop guy. Like I would live in those. But I understand you can't play darts well in them. So what's your thing?
The point you're making too is exactly right. I mean, I illustrated this shoe as the one that's been working for me, but it's really beholden on each player to say, I need to find what works for my foot and my, how I lean in, and it has to be comfortable, but it has to be supportive too. And the point that I really try to hammer home is, whatever shoe you find as a player, wear it for practice, wear it for play. Because of what shoes provide in terms of stability, but not only that, they actually create your vantage point to the board. So if you start changing shoes, you literally start changing height, you start changing how you lean into the Aki and how you rock on that front foot, whether it's lace up or Velcro, or like you said, when I was on the West Coast, so many players were playing in flip flops, just having fun. And I totally get it for the environment. But in terms of the activity, it's hard to repeat. It's hard to be comfortable and stable at the same time.
Yeah, it's the practice like you play mentality.
Right.
You mentioned this in the article. Wear the same shirt that you're going to do, and you got to practice as if you're actually playing. And I have a special set of shoes I use. I have a rowing machine that I use just for my rowing machine. And when I go, I do these rucks with where we strap weight on our backs and we go for I have ruck shoes. So it is really important, and that's why I've always been like the hey, we need a shoe guy out here, because I think it's super important. And I can envision the MVG shoe. It's got some green in it. I can the Peter Wright. It's multicolor. I could sell this, I think, but Nike and nobody else has jumped on board. So I want to get into the grip, because that's what we're really talking about. And I know Jen's not here with us because she wasn't feeling well. And before we do that, I need to give you a huge shout out, because in our last conversation that we had, if you guys didn't know, Dax, he coaches darts. This is what he does, and he can do it from afar because he's on the other side of the world from me. He's like the New York side. I'm on the Cali side. East Coast, West Coast. But I really took a lot of the stuff that was just off one video. I sent him a video. We're doing this, and I'm going to use him as a coach going forward. He said, "Hey, just start with this stuff, and we'll work on it." And my averages have gone up. I beat the one gentleman in our league that nobody has beaten, and I beat him somewhat convincingly. So I beat him, 2 games up. So I feel like I'm really gaining some leverage, and I'm understanding when when I'm blocked, I need to move, and I'm making that adjustment. That's been one of the biggest, mental changes. So thank you for the help. And if you guys are looking for some coaching, hit Dax up. He's just really great at this, really incredible at it. So I just want to thank you for that. So
you got it. My pleasure.
So let's talk about the grip, because this is always the big thing. Do I grip it from the front? Do I grip it from the middle? Do I grip it from the back? Oh, it's center weighted. Oh, it's back weighted. Where do I do? It's always the question. What are your thoughts on the grip?
Grip is one of the most unique parts about what we do on the Aki. If everyone's grip was the same, there'd be one dart barrel. There wouldn't be the product that there is. It's generally speaking one of the last things I ever look to touch or tweak with most players, unless they're doing something grossly over the top, detrimental to the game, where they're just adding so many moving pieces. There's so much to address before addressing grip, and if someone's doing something just that's comfortable, you kind of go with where they are from there. But grip is one of these things where it's basically driven us to, like any dart geek or aficionado, you don't have one set of darts. We all have a few sets, maybe more than a few sets.
Sure.
And in essence, we have a few sets. Some have it as collectors, some have it as fans of the game. But I think most players really enjoy buying new sets because they're truly trying to find the dart with the most perfect barrel grip for how they like to hold a dart. So we say grip, and it's like there's the grip on the barrel, and then there's how we actually hold the dart itself. And while I don't want to say there's any one way to grip a dart, because there's not, and we've seen that from all the pros across the spectrum, there are things that are done consistent across many players that I think are worth kind of touching upon. I hope Jen's feeling all right. Hello, Jen, if you're watching. A couple of shows back that she was on, she briefly started talking about grip, and it really resonated with me how she talked. We all have different hands. We all have different occupations, and we all do different things with our hands. And in terms of the anatomy of our hand compared to other parts of our body, it's the most unique in terms of comparison from one person to another. So, whether it be size, strength, moisture, flexibility, all those things play into how we position our hand on a dart. And making a grip change with how you hold the dart is I talk about it like it's not switching from Coke to Pepsi. It's a religious change. You're basically giving up one belief system for another to try to advance your game.
Yeah. And the other interesting factor that comes into grip that I always think about is the barrel shape. And then we have barrel weights, front weighted, basically center weighted, rear weighted barrels. Typically you find a front weighted or a center weighted barrel. But there's the grips in the last 3-4 years, the styles within the barrels, the available grip. And when I talk about grip in the barrel, it's really, from a scale, for me, it's a scale from like a 0 to a 5. How much does it actually hold on to the fingertips when you go to release it? Are you putting spin on that barrel because it's literally gripping onto your fingertips? So I look at barrel grip along with my grip, and I spent a lot of time switching from barrels and barrel weights and trying to find something that felt comfortable. And I realized for me, I want my barrel grip to be about a 2, 1.5, 2 on the barrel grip. And then I could find a grip that felt comfortable for me. And I fluctuated. It took me a year to really get something that felt super comfortable. Like that every time I pick up the dart, here's what I can do with it. And I still play around with it, but like you said, it's kind of like a religion. Once you find that grip, you don't want to change it. It just feels off. It feels wrong. So
it's challenging. And the one thing you can kind of, I always like going back to the pros and the best pros that there are video on. You go back to someone like Taylor, and you look at how his grip, posture, everything has evolved over the years. obviously the most video on him. You see how his physical grip changed with the 24 gram Purist when he had the Unicorn. And then when he decided to kind of go up to that fatter 26 gram Unicorn that was more along the lines of the John Lowe dart, I really had to question, why is the best player on the planet making such a drastic change? It was not only a different weight dart, but the diameter, the thickness of the dart was different. And how the barrel was weighted was different too. It wasn't as balanced as the longer 24 gram Purist. And you watched his numbers go up. And I really wanted to dissect that and say, what is he seeing about his own game and his own grip evolve that is making him change? And to me, this was more, this had nothing to do with needing or wanting to sell a new product, in my opinion. That barrel basically existed in the John Lowe original model. My thought, and this is a hypothesis, was he wanted a thicker barrel to actually loosen some of the tension on his wrist and forearm. The narrower we get in diameter on the barrel, the more our hand has to close around it to grip it. As the barrel gets slightly thicker, even if it's 1/10 of a millimeter or a millimeter, our hand opens up slightly, and all of a sudden, the forearm, the wrist, and all the little tendons in the hand, everything relaxes a little bit. And you've seen actually over the course of the past really 5 years, even that quarter-inch, the standard quarter-inch barrel, which I forget what exactly the millimeter measurement is, but it's gotten bigger. It's gotten slightly bigger by the 1/10 of the millimeter. And you've seen now some of these barrels, and you can really tell on the back end of the barrel where the shaft meets the barrel, how there's, on so many barrels, there's that ever so slight taper to make it a smooth transition to the shaft now. It used to be just smooth because the shaft and barrel were almost the same diameter. But now you see the gradation of the metal kind of taper to the shaft a little more. And I think all these pros are starting to recognize, I don't need the thinnest barrel. It used to be the thinking. I don't need the thinnest barrel with the most perfect grip, because now there's all this innovation in points. It's the point that has to touch the board, not the barrel. So they want to be able to feel the dart well. And the rest they put into the technology of the points now, which I've found kind of fascinating too. And I was one of the early kind of bandwagon types on longer points, and saying, I don't know why more people aren't using them. And now all of a sudden you have, the point technology has exploded. There's so many different types of points, and so many different types of grips for that matter. But you can talk, what they've done to barrels. The technology is beautiful, and some of the artistry is really worth commending. But the thing to realize, it has to work for you. Where your pressure points on your fingers are, how they touch the barrel, that's where you need to decide what type of grip you need on each part of the dart. That takes so much honing and so much time. Which is why the journey of buying so many barrels can be fun, because we experiment. We say, well, I like the back part of this dart, and I like the front part of this dart. Quite honestly, most of the gorgeous stuff these days, it's, you don't touch every part of the barrel. A lot of it is beauty and artistry, but it has to work. So, if a perfect game has been thrown with, like the old Terry Jenkins smooth barrel, and a perfect game has been thrown with every other unique barrel under the sun, it's like, it simply has to work for you.
Yeah, no, and for sure, the barrel's definitely got to feel right within the fingers. And you have to find something that's appealing to you from that standpoint. What feels right, how it's coming off the fingers. What I think a lot of people need to take into consideration, especially with all the new intricate cuts, is how that barrel is gripping on your grip, on your barrel grip. There really is something to how that barrel is staying attached to your fingers due to grip. Now, some people have sweaty palms, sweaty fingers. You need a little bit more grip. Are you playing in a colder arena versus a warmer arena? These are all factors that need to play into how you come at a barrel. One of the things then, interestingly enough, because I've always thought this about Taylor and him going to that slightly fatter kind of bomb shape. And everybody was like, how's he going to hit 180s? Which, as we all know, he had no problem with it. And of course, the thinner barrel, the idea was, oh, you're going to have way more room. You're going to be able to see that segment so much better, and you're going to be able to hit it. But it came down to that grip and really the tendons. My thing with Taylor, when he made the switch from Unicorn over to Target and kind of that real big change within his barrel, to me, I took it as, okay, he's getting older. There's a little bit of the tendonitis. There's a little bit of, tightness within the hand. And for a darts player, that could be a big issue.
Yeah.
And he went to a fatter barrel. So again, if you've got issues like that, or you're dealing with stiff hands, you're in a colder climate and your hands tend to kind of lock up because it's cold, maybe a slightly thicker barrel might work for you. What's your preference? Front grip, middle grip, back grip? And what's your journey to find your grip been? Since you've been playing for quite a while, and you might be a decent darts player here or there, maybe.
Journey is the right word, and preference, again, is specific to the individual. So how I grip a dart shouldn't necessarily be how anyone grips a dart. I am not the type of person to say you have to grip a dart a certain way. But what I will say is this: there has been an evolution. And when I decided I needed to make a change, I had to make a cold turkey change. But it was a 6-month journey for me, because I realized it wasn't going to be easy. When I first picked up a dart, I picked it up, and what was comfortable for me was, for whatever reason, kind of holding a dart. Where am I here? With my ring finger like that. As I got that was just what was natural. As I got more accurate and saw the flight pattern of my dart, and there was a huge waggle, my darts, the groupings were getting tighter, and I wasn't getting any of them to the board. They were all bouncing out on each other, and I knew it was me. It wasn't the dart. It wasn't the board. And I literally said, "Well, let me see what Taylor does." And he always talked about, you heard the term, and it's been written about 100 times: pencil grip. Well, originally that made a lot of sense, but there's so many ways to parse that, because how you hold the pencil and how I hold the pencil, and how everyone holds it slightly differently. Now you're even seeing in some of the really bespoke custom barrel manufacturers, it's not just a cylindrical shape. You have grips that actually mimic the hexagon or the pencil grip, how most pencils would be. So, you start experimenting and you realize, well, I want to relax. I want everything to be comfortable so that I can make it repeatable. What I started doing was, all right, well, how do I hold a pencil? And that's what everyone should say. It's not, how does Phil Taylor hold a pencil, because his hand is different than my hand, and his hand worked doing different things than my hands do. So you literally strengthen your hands and wrists and forearms. Everyone does it differently. So, to say one grip is better than another is I don't think, a way to approach grip. How I started gripping the dart, how I hold a pencil, I have my middle finger under the nose of the dart. Let's see where we are here. And my index finger over the top, and then a pinch point. Let's see if I can find a pinch point in the back between thumb and index finger. And the one thing or two things that I find, whether you have 2 fingers on top or 3 fingers on top, however you like to hold the dart, 2 things that you see as common denominators kind of across many pros, I don't want to say all, is what you do is you see the thumb is more often than not straight and locked out and pointed back at you, and the wrist is cocked. It's turned and cocked so that this is all consistent and tight in each drawback. As you take the dart and draw, you want the thumb pointed back at you and locked. You'll have a handful of players you see, and I personally don't recommend it, but I don't tell people not to do it if it works for them. You see, like Durant's got that thumb knuckle bent. Taylor originally, when you go back to old clips of Taylor, he started with it bent, and then as he pulled back, you see. I ask everyone I want you to question me, and I want you to look at the pros, and I want you to look at the videos and still shots and profiles. These thumbs are locked out and pointed back at yourself generally, and the wrist is cocked. The more you have the wrist cocked and the thumb back as you bring the dart back, the more consistency you can find in grip. So that every time you retrieve, the dart is in the same spot. What I found through my journey and experimentation of my grip, and I'll be the first to say I have 20 sets comfortably in a box, and I've looked to take pieces from every barrel and say what really works for me. Where do I need grip on the barrel for where my pressure points on the barrel are. And so I just recently had a barrel designed for the Colonial line through A to Z Darts. It'll be up on the website soon. And I'm the first one to say, I don't want people to buy it just because it's my barrel. I want you to buy it if you grip the dart like I grip the dart. Because I actually put the time in to really break that down. It's not, you don't need to be a fan of a player necessarily to buy their dart, although that's how we often kind of gain insights into darts. When Peter Wright won the World Championship last year, the set, everyone's been buying all his models, but then that new model kind of flew off the charts. He sold, there you go. He sold a lot of those models because all of a sudden everyone starts saying the same thing. Well, what does the best player on the planet throw with? And if you win the World Championship, you have that spotlight for a time. So everyone starts to pay attention and look and say, well, what works about that barrel that might work for me? And that's the way, everyone should look at it. It's, if you have a grip similar to Peter Wright, you should say, what worked for him? How he grips it, what worked for him that might work for me. That's how I would like players to approach the barrel types. It's so great now that so many of the websites and ways to buy, you can sort by nose type, by grip style, by length, by diameter. That's how barrels need to be searched. You need to be able to break it down that specific so that your sort is really good.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You bring up Peter Wright, and as we all know, he does change his barrels, and it's consistently evolving, and it really has to do with him finding a grip that feels good. And I think for him, one of the reasons he makes the change, there's two reasons. One, it's a mental thing. It's like, okay, I need to upset something, get that. It's like a hit workout for him. It's like, okay, I got to change. But then it's also a feel. At a particular tournament, the feel may be a little bit different for him. And so he switches it up. And if you've noticed, his barrels outside of the black, I want to say Mamba, I think was the name of it. Outside of those, they're all fairly similar. It's just a grip as far as the grip of the barrel that seems to change up. I will say in my journey of creating my barrel, I literally, like when I worked with Shot on that, they were like, okay, just play with a bunch of darts or, it was a process of finding, where do I want the pressure points? How do I want it to feel? I've got more grip on mine in a scallop at the back because it lays slightly on my finger, but I'm not gripping right there. I'm gripping at the front, which has less grip on it. So it's a journey. It really is. And it changes because, like I said, arthritis can kick in. You might be in cold weather part of the year. You might be, I happen to live in a place where it's 72 degrees, 24/7, 365, and I don't have to worry about that. But some of us live in areas where it snows, which is interesting to me, why you would ever do that. But it's a journey. It's interesting to follow, kind of look at it. And if anybody's curious, go to YouTube, of course, and go to the PDC. They have a channel there. They have a whole slew of videos of grips with the pros. They actually break down each pro's grip. And maybe you can find something you can emulate because it feels right or looks right. You can try some different grips. I wouldn't say, is there a preference between front gripping versus, say, middle gripping versus back gripping? But when you look at what the pros are doing, in my opinion, I think most of them are front gripping. What do you see?
I think that part is harder to parse out specifically. What I will say is, in terms of finger placement, it does appear that many pros have two fingers on top of the barrel or top side of the barrel, as opposed to the middle finger underneath, and then some even get three fingers on top of the barrel. In terms of their weight distribution, that stuff is really hard to parse in such a fast throw, and that's something you almost have to ask and talk to players about. My barrel is, I would say, slightly longer than average. It's 53 millimeters, and I can say I get my thumb all the way to the back of the barrel, and I have a scallop now in my dart. And again, you talk about the journey of barrels. I never would have guessed in a million years, if you would ask me 10 years ago, oh no, a scallop, I'll get a waggle. I never would have thought I would have liked that. And then I tried one of the Max Hop barrels a year or so back that had the scallop in the back, and I was surprised that it didn't feel like it was front weighted. It didn't feel like it threw my the angle of entry of my dart off at all. And all of a sudden, my thumb was in the same place all the time. You would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, I like the rounded nose barrel. And then as I kind of went through the whole process, I realized, well, my middle finger is slipping off the nose all the time. Why is that? I can't get a consistent place for my middle finger. And then you start experimenting. And when that Gary Anderson Phase 2 came out and had that taper nose with the fine kind of micro grip on that taper, I said, wow, my middle finger can kind of grip that a little bit, but I think the cut of the nose is a little too sharp for me to do it consistently. So I started, really piecing those things together. I could say, in terms of front or back, I feel I'm kind of right in the middle based on my thumb placement and my thumb being nice and kind of flat. And then my middle finger really just keeps the nose and point of the dart up, which, like you had Dynamite Dave on, he had a similar thought where upon release, just like how anything flies, like when a plane takes off, the nose goes up for flight and kind of basic aerodynamics, so that you can get a little bit of that drag and a little bit of that parabola in the arc of a dart flight. The point has to be up to start, or you really start to notice how the barrel itself can pull you down.
Yeah, and again, it is subjective to the person. The grip really is subjective. I will say, from a personal standpoint, one of my favorite throws, including grip, is going to be Barney. It's just such a nice, methodical, just easy, like laid back throw. And then you look at his grip, and it was in itself, it was this just nice. He wasn't trying to choke the barrel of the dart. It kind of just sat in his fingers. And I've tried to emulate that to a degree to just have it just kind of sit there, be a part of it. Like I'm just handshaking with the dartboard, and he's big enough and got a long enough reach that he pretty much was doing that. But I've always loved his throw and his grip. And I look at like Gerwin. Everybody wonders why Gerwin's darts fall out of the board way too often. He has such a light grip, and he basically grips the point and throws from the point. Not exactly. I mean, he's gripping the barrel a little bit, but it's interesting to see him. Everybody thinks this big muscular guy is just choking down on that barrel. It's such a light, like it's just sitting there, and he's just kind of releasing it out into the world. And it's just interesting to kind of look at the differences and to play with the grips. Now, I have a question, and there was a question that came in, and this comes from David. He says, what would be the indicators that it is time to work on changing your grip?
It's a great question. As I said, for me, it was my groupings were getting tighter, and there was a waggle to my dart, and they weren't getting to the board. So I was driving myself crazy trying to, starting to realize what I was doing was hindering my own growth. It's kind of the last thing I touch with any player, and I say this to every player. Everyone wants to kind of start there so often because they think between equipment and what their hand is doing, yes, there can be kind of grave consequences to having a horrible grip, but there's so much more to work with first in terms of balance and stance. If what you're doing, this is probably the easiest one. If what you're doing with your hand, however you repeat a grip, is causing you hand or wrist problems, as a lot of players I've come across, they get the ganglion cyst on top of their wrist where, it's all of a sudden there's a big bulge on top of their wrist from snapping it out. It's worth, if you're doing anything that hurts, it's worth addressing. It's worth thinking about making a change. If you have a lot of extra motion in how you pull the dart back, like Adrian Lewis, how he curls a little bit and then he comes forward. If you notice, his starts sometimes are a little slower. It has to do, and you can tell that he's not in his spot when his darts are sitting slightly higher than most regular. It's really good that he recognizes his cover so well, because he doesn't stay on that trip 20. He takes that cover quickly, but he is so smooth when he's in rhythm, when he pulls back in that twist and he finds that spot. His release, he's fun to watch when he's in rhythm. When he's not in rhythm, you see that 19 cover, 18 cover. You see it often too in the beginning of his matches as he's trying to find his range. So if you have a lot of extra motion, or you feel like you have a lot of extra motion in your pullback and your release, it's worth kind of looking at. And it's worth having kind of friends or people in the game kind of look at for you to see it. You have to ask the question kind of open-minded, because if you're willing to make a grip change, you have to be willing to kind of take a big dip in what you're doing to take a step forward.
Yeah. And one last question that I've got is, and we see this happening a little bit, like MVG's done this. He's gone back to an older barrel, but when is the time? We're talking about grip, and mainly we're talking about gripping the barrel, but there's grip on the barrel. When do you feel it's time to maybe change to not changing barrels, but maybe sticking with the same barrel or changing barrels? But at what point do you make an adjustment or a change to get a new barrel because the grip's worn down, or it's not? I want to say maybe you do it when it doesn't feel right, but do you have like a methodology that goes, okay, I've played with this barrel for this long, it's time to switch barrels?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I don't think enough players have stayed with one barrel long enough to kind of matriculate from a barrel getting older and just getting a newer version of the same barrel so that the grip stays. You see that with, obviously people who have their own barrel and realizing it's wearing down. Quite honestly, I think where to really pay attention to that these days is the barrels that have the more unique coatings to them. Any of the barrels that have the fancier coatings, those coatings do wear, and you feel a definite change in that. If the coating is what you like about the barrel, and between wear and tear and also just your hand and perspiration, that coating comes off eventually. You want to pay attention to that. I can't say that I've ever gotten distracted by the grip on a barrel wearing down to the point where it's like, I need a new barrel. I've always felt confident in older barrel, newer barrel. I'm the guy too who keeps a set of flights on past their prettiness, and I don't notice the difference that most players notice when their flights get all dinged up. So I'll plow through them until they really are goners.
Yeah, it's interesting. I play with a gentleman who's had the same darts for like 20 something years, and he's like, I bought them and they don't make them anymore. So I just keep playing with them because I really like them. And I look at them and I'm like, man, dude, they're just super worn down. But like anything, if you continue to use it, your grip style and everything is just going to continue to evolve as you're using that. And it's kind of like brakes on a car. You know, you don't realize how worn down they are until they start squeaking, and then you put new ones on. And what do you do the first time you stop? You just, everything jerks forward because you're used to pushing more on the pedal. And so again, there's going to be an adjustment from that standpoint. But
the thing really just to, the existential approach, even the barrel, it's all meant to get replaced. So if you're feeling that the grip has degraded, and you really love sticking with a certain barrel, buy a couple sets when you buy them so that, in the event that they stop getting made, they don't all of a sudden disappear and you don't have a barrel that you like.
Yeah. Yeah, or do what the rest of us do and just buy new barrels consistently and have fun with it. And then at some point
that's the fun part. I mean, that's literally the part that so many people, anyone watching this right now has that same giddiness when that package arrives with a new set that they've been waiting for.
Yeah. I get giddy. I'm like, yay. And it's funny because I have my own barrel and I have a bunch of them and that's what I use, but I still love getting new stuff and taking a look at it and playing with it. And just, it's so much fun.
That's what makes us, love the game. And we all have that same, we know that feeling and we love that feeling. And perhaps that's why we buy the equipment and the sets and all the stuff that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course there's the historical piece that comes into play. There's so many reasons to buy barrels, but, and it's Christmas. So, it's so many reasons to give barrels. So, it's awesome. Hey, Dax, I really appreciate your time. I know
pleasure.
We both have some stuff we got to take care of this morning because we got something. Let me see. Let me check the clock here. I'm going to check the timer if I can get my mouse. There we go. We have 56 minutes and 37 seconds until the World Championship starts. So I know we both have a couple things to do. So we're doing a little bit shorter episode. Hey, thank you again. And real quick, there is a young lady named Xandra who's from Canada, great darts player. She was in an accident, had to have some surgery done, and she's trying to rebuild her stance, everything from the ground up. She's got to start over. I would like to put you two together, and I would like to pay for a couple of sessions for her to work with you. So, Xandra, I know you had a question on here. How do you start all over? You start all over by getting a great coach like Dax, and he will help you. And you're a good darts player in your own right, Xandra. So I think it'll be a good thing. I'll get you guys together, Dax. You and I can figure that out. But I'd like to help get her back on the road because she wasn't in an accident, but just a good friend of the show and a great darts player. And she's actually on your coast, so it should work out pretty well. Where can people find you? We'll do that one to end the show.
Sure. I can be found on AtoZdarts.com. They have been great with me in terms of giving me a great platform to write. And anyone who's ever looking for direction or lessons, I always direct people to look at my articles on their blog first, because it's literally there for the dart community to use. Or you can reach out to me on Facebook. I'm really easy to find on Facebook. So by all means, reach out to me. It's truly my pleasure to help the community. So
that's great. Appreciate that. And yeah, guys, definitely check out those blogs because they're lengthy because there's a lot of incredibly great information in them. I personally think you need to take all that, squish it together, and create a book.
In the works.
In the works. Perfect. I've got my book, which is just a heretical history of darts. So it's a comedy book, but your stuff is going to be great. And I certainly will be reading that and I'm already taking it to advice. And I'll say, guys, my game's getting better. So I think last season, just one more quick story. Last season, I don't know that I had any 180s during tournament. I had a lot during practice, but not during matches. And it was all mental. And it was like the jitters. This year, I've got 8 or 9 so far during matches. So, my game has gotten much better, and it's really been because I've been working with Dax. And it's really only been the conversations we had, reading your articles, and then we've had one session so far, and my game has gotten that much better. So, honestly, he is a guru at understanding the stance, the throw, your body, and the mental aspect. So Dax, thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Let's see, we got Christmas coming up, but we've also got World Championships. And so I will be back on to talk more World Championships during the week. So thanks, guys. Thanks, Dax. And I will see you all later.